Welcome back to Mind at the Table, where real operators sit down and talk about the problems that actually matter. Today's guest is someone who has lived inside the systems most people only see on paper. He's calibrated, designed, built, and tested power distribution systems, run a power plant, and built electrical safety programs for global industrial companies. And here's the truth. Most safety programs fail in the same place, the last 10 feet, the point of work. The moment where a human being has to trust that the information in front of them is accurate, current, and aligned with the real equipment they're about to touch. It sounds like Tag Safety was built to solve that gap. Travis, great to have you here.
Thank you, sir.
Before we get into Tag Safety, Travis, I want people to understand why your perspective matters. You've been inside the systems literally. You've built them, maintained them, protected them, and the people who work on them. So just take us back a bit. What's the journey that led you into industrial power and safety work?
Yeah, thank you. Um, Travis admitted that I started my career as a double E electrical engineer from LSU, and this was in the mid 90s. From there, I was a field electrical engineer where, as you said, designed, built, commissioned, tested switchgear in the transmission distribution space for the first 6, 7 years of my career before I took the position of a plant manager for an 80 megawatt cogeneration facility, all the way from flow diagrams to being the plant manager and first combustion inspection. From there, I was a national electrical reliability manager, where we built electrical reliability programs for medium and high voltage systems. And in that role, as you mentioned, I developed the operator electrical safety training program for that company that was rolled out throughout North America. That was right around the time that arc flash label requirements were coming out through NFPA 70E. So I've managed the people that work on that equipment. I've worked on the equipment. I've seen some pretty bad failures, and I've seen some really good programs. After that, I went into process automation on the industrial side and worked for OEM. So I had the OEM experience with Emerson, Yokogawa, ABB, finally with Honeywell. And last year, that's when I decided to form Industrial Power and Automation Solutions. We're platform agnostic and looking to bring disruptive technologies to the market. And I think some of the solutions we'll talk about here today fit right into that hand in glove, if you don't mind the electrical PPE pun.
Love it. Yeah, and I mean, wow, a great background of experience that anything that you've reviewed and recommend comes, from a point of knowledge and experience in the industry. So speaks highly of what we're about to discuss today. Maybe when you were early in your career, boots on the ground, hands on the equipment, what were the first signs that the safety systems on paper didn't always match the reality that you were seeing in the field?
Yeah, pretty much right out of the gate. I was a young electrical engineer with a pocket protector and a calculator, talking to these guys with dirty boots and scruffy, salt and pepper hair. And, the first things they said is, you engineers have no idea what it's like in the field. No matter what you put on paper, put on design, it's going to change as soon as I put my hands on it, because the conduit size is wrong, the termination schedule is not what you had predicted it to be, whatever. It is any number of things. And when I would design a system and then I would go out and commission a system, it became painfully obvious. You would go to commission a system and something didn't work, and you go back to see what happens, and the wire wasn't terminated correctly, or it's terminated in the wrong spot. And those changes that they were doing in the field weren't making it back to the as-built drawings, much less back to the design drawings that we were using to troubleshoot. So, it really is endemic, and that was an issue 25, 30 years ago, and I'm sure that's an issue still today. You still hear the same problems.
Yeah, I certainly understand that. You've said something before that stuck with me, that power systems are unforgiving. Mistakes aren't theoretical. When you think about electrical safety in real industrial environments, what are the failure points that show up again and again?
Yeah, and it's, I'd hate to, say, communication. And communication takes several forms, right? So as part of the communication, you need to, and the failures happen not when a system is stagnant. You don't see somebody getting hurt, and that's how I'm considering a failure in the context of this conversation. You don't see somebody getting hurt by just walking in front of a piece of electrical equipment. You usually have to be involved in touching that equipment. So to properly and adequately identify, examine, implement, and use the right protection for that piece of equipment, all of those layers of protection need to be communicated from maintenance manager, operations manager, reliability engineers, mechanics, and electricians. Those layers of protections are built by design. You start with engineering around the hazard, which could be anything from mechanical enclosures to electrical circuits. It could be training. It could be labeling. It could be PPE, which is the final layer of protection. And, when you're looking at electrical, especially on the power distribution side, that PPE, those arc flash suits and gloves and hoods, it's not to make sure you go home looking pretty. It's to make sure that you're alive. And a lot of people don't realize that. And that is the final layer of protection. So if you're not communicating how to protect the worker when they're doing work and everybody's engaged in concert, you set yourself up for risk.
Yeah, and love what you say about PPE. People think, people may not realize that is the, that's the fail safe. That's the, if everything else goes wrong, that's what is going to make sure you go home. And typically not meant to be go home as you came to work, but just go home, right? So it's not gonna alleviate the risk of some pain if something goes wrong. So that's where preventative becomes so important, and that's where you get into tag safety and arc flash tags and things like that help to prevent versus both protect and prevent. But if we can prevent is always the best action when it comes to safety, right? So
Absolutely.
let's talk a little bit about data drift and outdated drawings, mismatched PPE, wrong arc flash labels, calibration not tracked. How does the drift actually happen inside of a facility? And why is it so hard to catch until something goes wrong?
Yeah, that's a great question. So what I've seen in my experience is plants, industrial facilities specifically, are not static by design. Especially when you're looking at refineries, you're looking at specialty chem, you're looking at batch processes. Those processes are constantly changing, constantly evolving. We're always looking for ways to make plants more efficient. It could be putting in new, more efficient electrical systems. It could be replacing a regular motor with a variable frequency drive. It could be a transformer failed and you're having to replace it and shorten the supply chain. So you put in a new transformer that didn't quite match exactly what was there before. When you do those things, you change the available incident energy. And when you do that, then the arc flash hazard changes. Relay settings on the protected equipment need to change. And because we're only really doing these electrical power system studies every 5 years, some of these may go unnoticed. And the labeling on the equipment may not match what's really the available energy that could hurt somebody. So you're dependent on a robust management and change process, which sometimes is automated, sometimes it's manual. And even then, as you go through that management of change, oftentimes the equipment is in place before the studies are done, before the labels are updated, and that takes time. And time means that you're exposing yourself to non-compliance risk, personnel risk, and equipment risk. So, having a robust MOC program is important, but having a way to speed up getting that information in the field and in the hands of the technicians is really paramount as a process changes.
Yeah, and that ability to update something real time as you're making a change to it, as tag safety allows, is elevating the ability to prevent accidents from happening, damages to be caused, and cost to the company as well, right? So
Absolutely.
And what you're describing, the drift, the outdated drawings, the static labels, this is, as I just mentioned, why tag safety exists, it seems. But from your experience, why is getting accurate current information to the point of work so critical? And what changes when the person doing the job can trust the data that's in front of them?
Yeah, thank you. So, it's not just in the electrical safety world. Whenever you have an operator putting together a work permit, and they think they know the hazards. Then you have the maintenance technician, maintenance manager, and then the technician. And you have a lot of legacy paradigms. Well, this is how we've always done it. So you're going to have that in play. Then when you have two or three different people that are doing a job on electrical equipment and you have conflicting information around what do you isolate first? How do you isolate it? What type of PPE do you have? Those things are going through everybody's mind, and you don't want to have a debate in the field when you're fixing to expose yourself to what could be a very hazardous condition. You want everybody to be in lockstep. So having the right procedures, the right PPE, the right amount of confidence, that allows people to do the job correctly and safely.
And I can see how, like, when it comes to safety, we have a saying, in the fractional CFO, CEO space, C-suite, basically, that ego is not your amigo. And I don't find that it's so much ego that comes into play when it comes to making changes to safety. It's more, this has worked to protect us for so long, and so people are reluctant to introduce a switch or a change to what's become second nature to them. Sometimes it takes a second to wrap your brain around the fact that this will actually be better than what you've done in the past, and so getting outside of your comfort zone just temporarily will allow you to progress to a safer and better environment for you and the people around you. So you've worked in environments where the engineering team is. This is maybe a little more towards the ego side, but the engineering team is saying one thing, the field's saying another or seeing another, and the paperwork is somewhere in between. Why is the gap between engineering and field execution the biggest risk multiplier in any facility?
Well, yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. So, what we've been talking about, and some folks that are watching this may have heard of the single source of truth. And there's a reason that is trending. I think more and more of us are starting to realize the value of information and disseminating the right information to the right person when they need it, where they need it. Because if the information that you're getting is inconsistent or worse, conflicting information, the results could be catastrophic. Mistakes are going to get made, and people could get hurt. But there's no reason why we can't with today's technology, with tools like tag safety. There's no reason why we can't take that next step and put the good information in front of the right people at the right time. So really excited about that.
Yeah, I mean, that leads right into, when you look at tag safety as a single source of truth, the digital alignment, the real-time updates, how does that then close the last mile problem that every plant manager quietly knows exists?
Yeah, so it's the unspoken truth, right? I mean, everybody, not only do they accept it, they expect it, that there's going to be conflicting information. So to get it to close that last gap, that's where having tools like tag safety, when you're going from having a power system study and within minutes, not hours or days, to be able to project that information to an arc flash label and have that in front of the guys within minutes of looking at that information, that really does close the gap.
Yeah, and I mean, you're talking about hours and days sometimes of delay, but what we're hearing from some of the clients we're working with is, they get these arc flash work orders stacking up on their desk for sometimes weeks or even months before they send somebody out, engineer or electrician out with new arc flash tags to stick on equipment that was updated, weeks ago in some cases. So, greatly multiplying the risk factor and the complications that could happen. And we're not just talking about software, you're talking about consequences. You've seen what happens when the data is wrong. From an operator's point of view, what does it feel like when the field finally has a single source of truth? When the PPE requirements, the arc flash dangers, the equipment data, all of it is aligned and current.
Yeah, well, I mean, imagine this, right? And this exists today, where you have a dashboard in the maintenance manager's office, in operations, where they can see when the last arc flash study was done, what changes have been made to their electrical assets since the last study. They can see what PPE needs to be done. They can see drawings, instruction manuals, calibration checks. They can see all of that before the technician even gets in the truck to go out to the field. They know which PPE they need. They know what risks are there. So the maintenance manager knows it, reliability manager, operations manager, your operations people that write the permit, the job safety analysis, the technicians. So when they go out to the field, they're in lockstep, they're in concert. Everybody understands the risks, everybody understands the right procedures. And it's coming from, like I said, that single source of truth. We're not making it up as we go. These are being natively pulled from the documentation that actually guides those processes in the field. And if there is a change, then management can then bulk push those new updates and new changes to the field, and they go right to the tag. You don't have a maintenance technician, electrical technician with a binder or folder full of tags. They get left on the seat of the truck, or get dropped on the ground and stamped on and just never get it installed. It just automatically gets to where it needs to be.
Yeah, it's it's a good analogy. Even just from a PPE perspective, right? You're talking about an efficiency. Someone goes out to the field and then realizes they get there and they all of a sudden look at the arc flash tag and they go, "Oh God, I needed this and I don't have it." Now it's a question of, is anybody looking? Do I just quickly do this without the right PPE on, or do I now, get crap by the boss because I ran back and it took longer than expected to get the right PPE? So by eliminating all of that, it just helps people do their work more efficiently and without having to decide themselves whether or not they want to take a risk or get written up or whatever the case might be.
Absolutely.
And let's flip it on the other side now. What does it feel like when the field knows that paperwork doesn't match the reality in the field?
Well, as an electrical engineer, that makes me very, very uncomfortable. As a plant manager, I really counted on my folks in the field having the right information, because we're all trying to make each other safe. And oftentimes when it doesn't match, it's not as though somebody would go out and say, "Oh, look at this paperwork, it doesn't match." They might not even know it matches, and they might not realize until they make a mistake. And at that point, it's too late and people get hurt. So it's having the wrong information in the hands of people that are working in and around electricity as a silent killer. You can't see it, smell it, taste it. It's not like a high-speed piece of rotating equipment. You really want to make sure that people are doing things safely, following the right procedures, wearing the right PPE is paramount.
Yeah, and I can imagine trepidation and time delays that would come from, if you're not trusting the information, you're taking 5 extra steps to confirm it as you're going, right, to protect yourself.
Right.
So
True.
I could really see the impact, the stress on the field, and the trepidation and the time cost as well of that happening. Let's zoom out a little bit. Industrial facilities are modernizing or trying to. Where do you see the future of safety heading? Why is digital alignment no longer optional?
So I'm sure you've heard of the Industrial Internet of Things, IIoT. The data is there. The data is happening. We've seen artificial intelligence, machine learning, digitalization. It's happening. The amount of information that we have access to is awesome. And with that awesome amount of information, it can get fuzzy, it can get gray. But even the standards writers, the codes, the regulatory folks, OSHA, they know that this is coming too. They know that the plant owner operators have access to this information. And to not do something with it and take advantage of it to improve the safety of the workforce, the reliability of the facility. I, I don't think there's going to be a lot of patience, even for shareholders, to say that, we have all this information. What are we doing with it? And if we can find tools like tag safety that can take that information and again, change the paradigm. Let's stop doing things the way we've always done it. Let's do things different, better, safer, smarter, faster. I think it just makes too much sense.
Yeah, and one more piece, vendor agnostic infrastructure. You've been pretty vocal about why that matters. Why is it so important that safety systems integrate with the real equipment and just not the preferred equipment?
Yeah, that's a great question. So coming from the OEMs, our initial statement was you need to use us and only us, right? We didn't like competition, but that's rarely the case, especially when it comes to electrical assets. In very, very, very few instances could you walk through a facility and just see one OEM label on the asset. Could be variable frequency drive, could be a gas insulated circuit breaker, transformer, power distribution system, MCC, lighting panel, UPS systems, whichever the case may be. So having the ability to work across all of those, regardless of the OEM, I think is really important. Having the ability to do that kind of unhandcuffs you with the solutions that you can bring to bear. And that's why I'm really glad that, with the company that we've started, Industrial Power and Automation Solutions, we're platform agnostic. We're looking for new, innovative, disruptive companies that can illuminate and eliminate paradigms across the industry. And with this latest tool, Tag Safety, I think it really fits, again, going back to my initial pun, hand in glove, to where I'd like to see us going.
Awesome. I agree fully. Travis, this has been the kind of conversation that most leaders never get access to. The real operator view, the view from the field, the view from the systems that keep the lights on and keep people safe. Most founders and plant leaders don't have someone like you in their corner, someone who has built the systems, runs the systems, and protected the people working on them. So thank you, Travis, for joining us today. Any final thoughts or words you'd like to share with our audience?
No, Toby, I appreciate the opportunity. Just be safe, everybody. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Mind at the Table, where real operators talk about real problems and real solutions. This episode was brought to you by Hyperion Business Solutions, helping businesses one conversation at a time. Ideas are easy, alignment is protection, and the smartest minds, they never leave the table.